two, three.
You said that real success starts with finding your because. I changed that to why because that's what everybody says, your why,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So, how did you identify your why and how did it change the trajectory of your career and your show?
Yeah. So my why was actually my because. And the reason I have this thing that I call because is this. And we will role play this, Myrna. If I were to say, Myrna, who's your why or what's your why?
I would say generational increase, right?
Okay. Now watch this.
What was that?
Why? Watch this. Why is it your why?
It is my why because I came from poverty and I want to make sure that my I leave an inheritance for my children.
Okay. Now start the sentence again. What did you start the sentence with? It's your why. What'd you say next?
Because
That's
yes,
why,
I got
because
you.
that's what I care about. Yes, your why is
I get
important,
you.
but I
Nice.
care about the because when I ask you why is something important to you or why is something your why, naturally you're going to start with because,
Because
and
yes.
that's what I care about. And so the whole purpose of me starting the podcast was to talk to the world about that. Because if you're to ask me in business and in life, what's made me focused, what's what some people will say success, that's other people's opinions, but what's got me to where I am, it's because of a promise that I made to my mom to change her life. And I live that because every day. And so it's evolved to promises that I made my kids, promises that I made to my spouse, promises I made to my siblings. And so because of the promise that I'm destined to keep is why I do what I do. And there's power in living through your because. And that's why I wanted to bring it to the forefront.
Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio podcast and television show. I'm your host, life coach Myrna Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is Michael Mick Hunt, host of the Mick Unplugged podcast. And today, Mick and I are going to be talking on the topic of the business of podcasting, a subject that's near and dear to both of our hearts. And I know to a lot of hearts because podcasting is the new big thing and everybody wants to do it. Most people get burnt out because, like Mick is going to tell us, you're going into it, you've got all these dreams and hopes, but after a while, when you don't get anything back from it, you burn out and you quit and you stop. So, yeah, it's good that you have a heart to share, something that's passionate to you. But on the flip side, you want to make it a business. So that's basically what Mick and I are going to break down today. So welcome, Mick.
Myrna, I'm so excited and honored to be here with you today.
You're very welcome. Awesome. All right. I'm excited and honored to talk to you again today because I think you're doing some better things than me. So I'm going to learn too.
No, 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 no. Please.
Amazing. All right. Well, let me give you guys a brief introduction. Michael Mick Hunt is a force in modern leadership, host of the chart topping Mick Unplugged podcast, electrifying keynote speaker for Fortune 500s, and the powerhouse MC of the Les Brown Power Tour. With audience of 15,000 plus, Mick's dynamic presence and bold insights have made him the go-to coach for elite leaders across business, entertainment, and government. A double Forbes Council member and a trailblazer in executive training, Mick doesn't just talk about leadership, he lives it. So discover the movement at www.mickhuntofficial.com. Amazing. Now, I want to start off by, talking a little bit of Les Brown because I love him. I've
Yeah.
seen him in person a couple of times, and he was the original, motivation speaker,
Yeah.
storyteller our Black culture. So I know that you're the MC,
Mhm.
but I'm pretty sure as an MC, you've probably followed some of Les Brown's, um, uh, you know, advice as far as business and leadership and storytelling and all these things. So share some lessons that you've learned from Les that has fueled your success.
Yeah, so Les is actually my one of my mentors. So that's how I got to be a part of his power tour. And I learn lessons from Les every day. But for anyone that does any type of speaking, and it doesn't mean you have to be a tour speaker, you could do 2 or 3 speeches a year. There's one thing that Les taught me about the audience is one, never tell a point without a story. And the flip side of that is never tell a story that doesn't
Without
have
a
a
point.
point. And when he told me that and then taught me how to write in that sense, it made storytelling much easier. Instead of worrying about a bunch of numbers and stats, you focus on the stories and points, and then learning how to tell that same story in 3 minutes, in 7 minutes, in 10 minutes, because you need to know the energy that the audience is giving you back to know, oh, I can sit here for a while on this story, or okay, they got it, let me move on. But again, never tell a story without a point and never make a point without a story.
I love that. He's listed as one of the top five storytellers. And
Absolutely.
yeah, listen, he can tell a story. And it's true. I mean, I think that a lot of people have picked up on that concept where, I go on to everybody's website, and I did it on mine too. You go to my website and you see my story right there, prominent and center, because everybody, identifies with you and
Mhm.
your story, and you've got to tell it in a way that um, uh, gets people on board with your point that you want
Right.
to share. So yeah, I know that there definitely that you had to have learned some things from Les Brown. So it's also great that he's still touring and doing things. I noticed he's got an event coming up in October because I follow him on social media. I know he had some health challenges, but I'm glad that Les is still around and that you're his MC. I can just imagine you now with that deep voice and
I'm telling you, and Les probably has more energy than I do on most days too. So to be 80 years old, the energy that he has,
that how old he
the
is?
commitment that he's
Wow.
made to his personal health and just fitness and energy is second to none. And so when you see Les Brown today, you get a more energetic Les Brown than we had in the 80s and 90s. That's for sure.
You are kidding me. I have not seen him probably in about 15 years. He was in Miami at one point when he was doing that Get Motivated tour or something. There was a whole bunch of
Mhm.
people, and he was one of them. And so I haven't seen him in a while in person, but I've seen him on social media.
Yeah,
Right. Didn't know he was 80. That's
absolutely.
amazing.
Yep.
That's what you call a long-standing career. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, all right. So let's get to the business of podcasting.
yeah.
You said that real success start with finding your because. I changed that to why because that's what everybody says, your why,
Yep. Yep.
right? So, how did you identify your why and how did it change the trajectory of your career and your show?
Yeah, so my why was actually my because. And the reason I have this thing that I call because is this. And we will role play this, Myrna. If I were to say, Myrna, who's your why or what's your why?
I would say generational increase, right?
Okay, now watch this.
What was that?
Why? Watch this. Why is it your why?
It is my why because I came from poverty and I want to make sure that my I leave an inheritance for my children.
Okay, now start the sentence again. What did you start the sentence with? It's your why. What'd you say next?
Because
That's
yes,
why,
I got
because that's what
you.
I care about. Yes, your why is
I get
important,
you.
but I
Nice.
care about the because when I ask you why is something important to you or why is something your why, naturally you're going to start with because.
Because.
And
Yes.
that's what I care about. And so the whole purpose of me starting the podcast was to talk to the world about that. Because if you were to ask me in business and in life, what's made me focused, what some people will say success, that's other people's opinions, but what's got me to where I am, it's because of a promise that I made to my mom to change her life. And I live that because every day. And so it's evolved to promises that I made my kids, promises that I made to my spouse, promises I made to my siblings. And so because of the promise that I'm destined to keep is why I do what I do. And there's power in living through your because. And that's why I wanted to bring it to the forefront.
I like it. Like I've never heard anybody say that before. That's why I changed it to the why.
Yeah.
But I think why sounds sexier, I guess. But you're right. It is why because you lump them together. That's amazing. All right. So your show is the Mick Unplugged podcast. So
Yes.
how did you come up with that particular format to um to get to your because?
Here's the crazy part, Myrna. I didn't want to start a podcast. What I wanted to do was just to create YouTube content. I just wanted to have content around because I was writing a book and because was going to be a part of it. And so that was the mission of what I was doing. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do a YouTube channel. And Les Brown, my mentor, said, no, you should do a podcast. I was like, I don't want to do a podcast. Two of my other friends who are podcasters said, Mick, you should really do a podcast. So I sat there, I contemplated. Les told me, hey, I'll be your first guest. And I was like, okay, that's different. Okay, I can do
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
reached
Talk
out
about
to
hitting it
three
out
or
of the park
four.
on the first one.
Exactly. I reached out to three or four of my other friends who said they'd be guests. So I said, okay, I'm going to do a podcast around because and ask people about their
Oh, wow.
because everyone goes through something. Everyone is going to go through something. And so to hear how other people have prioritized their purpose, how they've persevered through a challenge will probably resonate with someone. Right. Like, so my show is not about me. It's 100% about my guest, their stories, their perseverance, because selfishly, that's what I would want to listen to. So I built a show that I would want to listen or watch. And I wanted to make it truly about the guests that I bring on. And so that's why I chose the format.
Wow. That's interesting. Yeah, one of the questions your team sent me is about your guests. I didn't put that one on here, but I can understand because the That American Life, they're the one that started this whole podcasting explosion.
Right.
And that's what they did. They went around the country and they talked to people and get their stories. Now, it wasn't because of the because, but it was probably because of something that they went through and persevered and came out on the other side. It's the same thing. It's the same concept of storytelling. Like Les Brown says, storytelling is so important because everybody likes to live a rare story. I read books,
Mhm.
and 90% of the books I read are about their autobiographies and they're but stories. And I get such a high.
Mhm.
I get such a high listening to people's stories. I mean, it's amazing. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so having a show around talking to people about their because that's beautiful. Now I can understand why you're so successful because storytelling is what everybody gets involved in. And the great thing about it, people are saying, how do you get them to stay to the end? When you're telling a story, you stay to the
Right.
end.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the other thing that we make sure that we do. We actually talk to our audience. So I'll pose a question on behalf of the viewers or listeners. And I'll say something like, hey, Myrna, for the viewer or listener that's struggling trying to understand podcasting, what advice would you have for them? And so then we talk to that viewer or listener every time.
That's good. That's good. I have not incorporated that yet. So, how do you do that? Do you do that your website, YouTube? Where do you
Oh,
have this
we do
interaction?
it we do it live in the episode. So it's more of just, hey, I know someone's listening and they're probably struggling with A, B, and C. You just said you overcame A, B, and C. Give us two or three tips that we can implement today. And so we'll just talk through that.
Wow, that's a great format. That's
Yeah.
amazing. All
Thank
right.
you.
That is great. Okay. So you had the idea, you got some good friends like Les. So, how did you go about treating your podcast like a business? Because as I introduced when, the little blurb that I said before,
Mhm.
we started, getting in the deep dive, is that
Mhm.
there's like 2 million podcasts right now. They're probably
Yeah.
more. That's the last number that I heard, right? And I think they say that if you've got 10,000 downloads or something, you're in the top 1%.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of, I like your word, noise, but
Mhm.
people are not getting the downloads. They're not getting the audience. They're not able to monetize, just a nice new word.
Right.
So walk us through how you turned this idea into a business model.
Yeah. So when I first started the podcast, like I said, I originally just wanted content, right? I didn't necessarily care that it was on Apple and Spotify and YouTube and all those places. I just wanted the content. And I assumed, Myrna, this was naive me, that unless your name was Joe Rogan or Mel Robbins or Call Her Daddy, I assumed everybody else was doing it for free and as a hobby.
Really?
It,
Wow.
it wasn't until 3 months in when one of my friends called and said, "Hey, like you're showing up in like the top 100 of Apple," and I was like, "What does
Nice.
that mean?" And
You
so
did that 3 months in?
3 months in, and I said,
Nice.
"What does this mean? Like, how is that
Oh,
possible?"
okay.
And then I started looking at the stats. And so at that point, I said, okay, if there's visibility, I now need to change the focus of this being a hobby to truly running this like I would one of my other four businesses, which meant that I had to measure the input that I was giving it. And input is time, it's monetary resources, it's all the effort that goes into editing clips and all that. And then what's the output of that? So when I do post a clip, what's the engagement looking like? Does it affect the downloads if I do a clip on Instagram versus LinkedIn? And does it affect it if I do more than one clip? When do I do the clips? When do I release the episode? So I really started looking at the data and the information that was given to me, which every podcast has. So it's not like I was doing something different, right? Like there's stats on every podcast. And then I started thinking about the user experience. So now, what does Myrna want to hear on the other end if she's listening? Or what if she's watching? What do I need to do differently? So I really started looking at what does it cost me to produce it? What's the potential ROI? But more importantly, where is the engagement and what's moving these numbers? And so I hired a team. We really started deep diving into analytics and we started figuring out what was working. And then once we did that, we noticed that, okay, the buzzword that you talked about, people are actually making money on this thing. And advertisers and sponsors like certain things. So how do I cater to them that fit my brand? Not just any advertiser or any sponsor, but those that really fit the brand of me personally and the show. And then everything just started exploding from there. So 6 months in, I signed to a major network, and the rest has been history.
Wow. I am so impressed with these people like you that were able to come on and just hit it right out of the park. I've been podcasting now for about 7, 8 years, and I'm nowhere near Mel Robbins or you for that matter. But
Stop.
I bought her book and I follow her, and Joe Rogan is the road dog. I mean, he's been around for a long time,
Hmm.
so he worked for his success. But yeah, Mel Robbins, come on, and only been in podcasting 2 years, and
Right.
she's just hitting it out of the park. But,
Yep.
I thought that was probably because like, she's got a team behind her. And I mean, I don't know if hers is an independent podcast or not. Is yours an independent podcast?
No, I'm a part of a network, and Mel is a part of a network as well too.
Right.
Yeah.
That's I think makes a difference because you have a bigger team in order to get the word out there. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
okay.
and where the network helps is the sales, so the advertising and the sponsors, right? So they have teams that are having those conversations and bringing them to you to vet, and then doing things like host reads and live reads of advertisement. So that part it definitely helps with. But as far as the actual production, like, yeah, I'm an independent producer of the show. So like my team that does the editing and the engineering, it's all my employees doing
Oh,
the
okay.
amazing things that they do.
Okay. All right. Well, I still don't understand how when somebody says like, okay, you're with the Wandery, for instance, that's
Mhm.
a network. If you know how that works, if you're an employee and they pay you a
Yeah.
salary, or you're still an independent and you're part of their networks, explain that because that's something I would like to know.
Yeah. So when you join a network, what you're doing is getting a licensing agreement for them to be the distributor of your show. So
Mm,
think of it like the like TV shows, right? Like you've got ABC,
okay.
NBC, CBS, TNT, right? Like we all know those names. Those are the distributors of the show. So you're not an employee of the network as the talent. You literally do a revenue share of the sales that they add to your show. So their job is to put you in front of all the advertisers, to help with strategy around the brand and growing it. But no, you're an independent contractor. It's a licensing agreement, typically for the distribution of the show.
Oh, that's great. So they don't help you with promotion to non-sponsored guests. Like for instance, they don't help you to be in the top 100 of the Apple charts.
No, and
Okay.
that's always going to be a you thing. And when I say you thing, it their main focus isn't to promote and grow your audience. It's to promote and
Okay.
grow advertisers and sponsors.
Ah,
That's
okay.
always going to be your job as the talent, is to have the reach, which is why they're picky about the shows that they bring on. So they want to make sure you're already hitting numbers that are attractive for
Mm-hmm.
advertisers and sponsors, because then it makes their job easier to sell your show. Now,
Mm-hmm.
ranking in the top of your chart or in top charts altogether continues to help do that as well too. But again, their focus is all about getting advertisers, sponsors, and revenue dollars into the show.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to ask you the question everybody wants to know. How do you promote your show other than, what you've just mentioned, user engagement and understanding what the listener wants to hear? How do you, because listen, getting on the top 100 chart is an awesome accomplishment, right?
Yeah.
you know, I was there a long time ago when there were no podcasters around. It's
No,
really
so
funny, right? I was in the top 200 of Chartable, right, under my genre, right?
mhm,
But then, Chartable went away. So
yeah.
I'm not even sure what the charts are doing now. But yeah, that is quite an accomplishment. So, and you did that 3 months in. So, walk us through what exactly you did, other than content, other than user. What did you do? Because we want to know.
So the I'm gonna say the crazy, weird, unknown thing are the algorithms, right? So Apple and Spotify and all these places have algorithms that they don't know. But here's what I can tell you I do to, and I've always done to promote the show, is my guest selection. So I'm making sure I have guests that have engagement and reach, um,
Mm.
because that's how you're going to grow a new audience to your show. Meaning this, Myrna, if I did solo episodes only, my reach would only be my audience.
Or your
I
audience.
never really would gain a new listener after a certain level. And so
Mm.
I'm really particular about the guest. And honestly, and I know you feel this way too, I want my guests to be engaged with our episode. So I want them to like it and to promote it and to put clips out on social and to get their audience engaged. So part of the, call it secret sauce or whatever, is just being very selective about who I bring on. And my team does vetting. So we're going to make sure we don't necessarily care about numbers. So it's not like, oh, you need 2 million social followers. It's not that.
That's a
We
good
look at
number.
the engagement of what you have, because you could have 2 million followers, but only 200 engaged. Well, that doesn't mean you have a ton of engagement. So we like to make sure that you have engagement, because then that means that you're going to share and we're going to gain listenership, hopefully, if the content's good. So that was a big piece, was guest selection. And then two is just putting those assets out everywhere. So we're going to put it on LinkedIn. We're going to put it on X. We're going to put it on Instagram, which then puts it out on Facebook. And we make sure that we choose some really good moments of people that's going to gain interest. Right. You know, I'm a big believer. My buddy Gary Vee says it's no longer social media, it's interest media, right? People are scrolling,
I
and
didn't
you
hear
got to
that one.
be able to
Right.
get them to stop and show some interest. And so
Hmm.
we try to choose clips that have some moments of, oh, I want to hear about this. And I know I'm going to get more if I listen to the episode. So we'll do 30, 45-second clips on a topic and then release that out. So that was the strategy for the promotion piece.
Well, again, yeah, I started off like you, wanting content. And
Mm-hmm.
I would pick guests that are, and I also do a blogs, and I don't want to hear about the same talk about all over, because I can only have the one keyword on the blog, and then
Yeah.
Yoast is telling me, oh, you've used this keyword before. So I was heavily on the content. Um, and then I noticed that my guests were not, and I mean, this is 7 years of this. My guests were not engaging. They didn't even like. After they did the interview, I didn't hear from them,
Mm-hmm.
and and that got me. And then I noticed, because my ears are to the ground. I noticed that the top podcasters that I follow, their guests always have a large engagement. And I know that's how they're growing their show. Even though they're already, I'm talking about the Jay Shettys and the Lewis House, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure about the Mel Rodmans, but those are the two that I started following.
Yeah.
And I noticed that. So in 2025, and you saw the agreement,
Yeah.
I did an agreement where I asked guests, I said, if you're not gonna share clips on Instagram, then you're gonna have to pay, right? Because I'm not doing that. And yeah, and that's how I am growing my show, with that.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. I have it everywhere. I mentioned to you, I'm on the radio, I'm on the television. I just started streaming. I got a deal with Reveal, which is a streaming platform. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm putting my show everywhere, right? And of
Yeah.
course on the social media networks. I don't do X and LinkedIn. I need to add that back in. I was doing it, but I don't get much engagement, so then I stopped. But you're
Ah.
right. People might see it, they might not engage, and I should put it back out there. But yeah, that is very, very good. And then Diary of the CEO, is a show from England, and he's doing
Mm-hmm.
started in YouTube, and he's doing phenomenal work. I mean, when I noticed him, he was getting 1 million views on YouTube. He wasn't on the charts, but he's there
Mm-hmm.
now,
Right.
right? And
Exactly.
I heard him say something about how do you pick guests, and he
Mm-hmm.
said, "I'm going to pick guests on a topic I want to talk about," and that's another thing that I do, right?
Exactly. I'm the same way. Again,
Yeah,
and you know this, and everybody that's listening and watching that's in the podcast business or wants to get into the podcast business, here's what you're going to find out pretty quickly. You're going to get a lot of people that want to be on your show.
of
Right?
course.
You're going to get a bunch of emails or
I
forms
spend
if you
so
have
much
forms on your
time
website.
responding to those darn things. I'm thinking
Yeah.
I should get an assistant, but then I need to, I need to screen it myself. But
Yeah.
yes.
But that's it. Like,
Yeah.
you're going to get people's superficial story, and this is why I have a team that kind of looks into who you are. Like, everybody's resume looks amazing,
Yes.
and then you go look and they have like 300 Instagram followers, and it's like, okay, if you've done all this, right,
I
then,
know, right?
but you might have a great story, but then that story isn't validated. And so again, those are the things that we look at. And it's not to say that we won't, like, we don't everybody that we bring on isn't famous. Everybody we bring on doesn't have huge following numbers. But again, check the engagement. You just
Yeah.
want to, I don't care if you just have 200 followers, all 200 better be engaged with you then.
Engaged. Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. That's true. I do that myself now because yeah, I look for the follower count and I look the last couple of posts and you know, I've seen, but I wasn't sure what I was doing. I was just looking to see, right. But
Mm,
now that you have put it in a capsule for me and you know, put some quotes around it, now I know that that's what I'm going to be looking for. I'm doing it, but it was just I wasn't aware of what I was
yeah.
doing because I was just looking, you know. Um, all right, so that is great for somebody that's wanting to start a podcast. Let's summarize. What are you starting a podcast? What are some of the things that you need to do to turn your podcast into a business? Let's go through the steps.
Yep. So one, when you start, make sure you have a theme. You know, Myrna, you just talked about that, right? Like what's the theme or the overflowing topic of the show going to be, because you need to make sure you've got consistency. So that's the first thing. The second thing then is choose the format. Are you going to do an interview show, a solo show? I'm going to tell you always do an interview or guest show because you're not going to grow it, right? Again, unless you're a celebrity that's like, oh, I'm going to start a show and you know you've got a million people that'll listen. Most of us are not that person,
Mm-hmm.
right? So understanding the format, and then I'm going to tell you this, and I think people miss when they do this. I'm going to tell you decide if you want a show focused on an audio output or a video output. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't record the video all the time, but think about who your audience truly is. There are some people that will only view a podcast on YouTube, right? Like they want to see the video component of it. And I'll tell you, my audience is usually the opposite. 67% of my audience are CEOs, business leaders who are listening to the podcast at the gym or on their way to work or on their way to a meeting. So they're not going to have time to physically watch it. So understanding who your audience is and what platform, audio or video, are they typically going to listen or watch from? Because then that goes to the next point of the equipment that you need, right? Or the
Mm,
platform that you need. So understanding, you know, you need a hosting platform where you distribute the podcast. You need something like we're on Zoom right now or Riverside or whatever, so that it can be curated and housed. So understanding those components are critically important. And then make sure if you're doing interview that you can get guests that people want to talk to or people want to hear from, that have stories that, again, whatever your theme is, that can go down that theme. I think those are the critical first steps of getting a podcast started. You don't need fancy equipment, right? You don't need expensive things, but you just need to make sure that you understand what's the theme, audio or video, um, what components do I need to make it happen, and then focus on the equipment. But again, a microphone, a
yeah.
webcam, for most everybody, you're going to be solid.
Yeah, I hear some people even doing it on their phones. You
Right.
know, the iPhones are pretty powerful. I wouldn't go
Yeah.
that far, but you're very right. Um, you know, the trend recently, and I'm not going to get into it because I think it's too expensive. The trend is to have a studio with a video team and doing video podcasts because that's where it's going. But yeah, I'm still at my house and I'm
Mhm.
still on Zoom or whatever. I would have to do a whole lot more of downloads in order for me to go rent a studio and get a team that I have to pay for a video. But you know, all the big guys are doing it. And then the other thing I noticed, for instance, I mentioned the Diary of the CEO, Diary of the CEO. I saw
Mhm.
Michelle Obama on his show. So she flew
Mhm.
to London. I mean, I can't just imagine people coming from all over the world to come and see me in person.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not there yet, but that is where the trend is going. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, I would say 85, 90% of my podcasts that have been released to date have been virtual. So virtual guests just like this.
Yeah.
I am starting to do a few in-person podcasts where I will
With
go
video?
rent a studio for a day,
Okay. All right.
and then have 4 or 5 people from that location come in and we'll just crank out podcast episodes because there is something said about that in-person energy, right? There is something about that that I do like and that I do miss, but it's not a requirement. Again, most
Right.
people, especially with editing now, and you don't need a professional editor. AI can do this for you. I promise you, when you're looking at this, you're going to think, if you didn't look at the background, Myrna and I are going to feel like we're right beside each other or next to each other.
Right.
And you can
Exactly.
edit it
Yeah.
to make it look like that. So don't feel like everything needs to be in person. It is much more expensive, right? You've got to hire videographers.
Yeah.
If you don't have them, you've got to rent space if it's not at your
Yes.
home. And then editing those, because it's usually 3 camera angles, is a little more expensive to edit as well too. Where this Zoom is going to chop this up. Riverside will chop this up and even give me the clips that I don't have to go do.
All
So,
right. Well, I don't use it from them. I have someone on my staff that
right.
does the clips and
Yeah.
things like that. But yeah, I mean, but that's not a bad point. I mean, I have access to my television studio, so I can actually rent it out and but I like what you said. I always, like I said, I get ideas from a lot of people. And yeah, I mean, I think I I don't really listen to the show, but for some reason he's on my email. Entrepreneurs on Fire, I think that's what he's called.
Hmm.
And he said something the other day that's amazing, that he works 5 hours a week on his podcast. He goes in one day and he does his interviews in the one sitting.
Mm.
So what you've just said is similar. You rent a studio, you get 5 people, and you just do back to back. But that's what he does. I'm not
Yeah.
quite sure how he does a daily show, so it's
Mm.
probably not very long. Maybe it's only half an hour. So he works
Yeah.
5 hours a week
Yeah.
and cranks out his show. So that is, and he makes a lot of money.
Yeah.
He has, turned his show into a business. But again, if you're going to be in this space, you've got to be learning all the time. So I
Hmm.
learn from everybody. So I don't necessarily listen to his podcast, or maybe I must have listened one time for me to be on his list. But I mean, yeah, but that's not a bad idea. I was looking at Jay Shetty the other day, interviewing Madonna, and that's
Hmm.
obviously one you need to do in person.
Right. Right.
And he had all this big old photo shoot and everything. So yeah, if you're gonna have a big guest and they're willing to come to you, then yeah, rent a studio and get a team. And my studio already has because it's a TV studio, they already have the talent there. All I have to do
Yeah.
is pay for it. But not bad. Okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, great conversation. Thank you for the tips. Thank you for, putting it out there to the wannabes, people
Yeah.
that want to move up that ladder. Very, very good advice. Now,
Absolutely.
yeah, all right. So, I think we've already covered this one, that your show competes with Joe Rogan and Alice Cooper on the Apple charts. Um, so is there anything else that makes you stand out? I know we talked about your format and whatever. What do you think makes you stand out that you haven't talked about with those top two? Because he's the top male and she's the top female.
Yeah. I don't know if I do anything that stands out, to be honest. Like, every show is about my guests, but what I will tell you is I don't do extremely long podcasts. I'm 35 to 40 minutes. Again,
Yeah,
I
Joe
try to have
Rogan
a
does three
structured.
hours. I don't know how much Alice Cooper does.
Yeah, yeah. But I think part of the algorithm helps when people re-listen to a show. It is
Mhm.
much harder to re-listen to a 3-hour show than it is a 30-minute show. So I try to keep them digestible. And again, I have a structured format in my show, and I would like to think it keeps people engaged. That's my hope, that that's
Mhm.
what it is. But as far as standing out, I'm always going to say it's just about my guest. I love my guest, all of them. People ask me who's my favorite one. I say, yep. that one. um, but it truly is. It's just about the guests and the stories that they tell, that even some of my A-lister or influencers, right? Like I have Robert Irvine, celebrity chef Robert Irvine, one of my best friends in the world. We talk
Mhm.
about things that you don't hear him talk about elsewhere. When Les Brown and I interviewed, we talked about things that I know Les and I talk about that he doesn't talk about elsewhere. Same
Hmm.
thing. I'm about to interview one of my mentors, Damon John, and we're going to talk about things that,
Oh,
if you've
Damon
seen
John,
Damon a million
nice. He's
times,
your
it's going to
mentor.
be a story he's never talked about, right?
You've
So
got
I
good
think
mentors.
that's what it is. It's about my guests. It's literally not about me.
So how do you find these guests? I mean, like I said, I get pitched a lot. I don't actually go out and look for guests anymore. I'm too busy, responding.
Yeah.
So do your guests come to you or you go look for them?
No, they come to me, a lot of referrals, um, and that's usually how it goes. I do have I use central talent booking, um, for a lot of people that I know, a lot of celebrities or A-listers that I know. It's hard. Like if Robert and I want to do a podcast, we got to go through each other's teams. And so I use central talent booking to go through the teams to make sure it gets on the calendar and on the schedule.
Okay.
And they
Uh,
do a really good job of bringing people to me that maybe I'm not thinking about. But
mhm.
for everyone starting out, or even if you've been doing it for a while, I mean, your content is going to speak for itself. If you put together a quality show, people are going to want to be on it. It's going to get seen. And your job is to just make sure you deliver. And that's always my message of, think about the show and the end user experience first, and everything that's supposed to happen will happen.
That's great. Well, that is me too. Like I said, I like talking about things that I know about so I can give a good conversation, number one,
Mhm.
because I think that's the strength of this show, my conversational ability. And I also want to talk about things that people are interested in. So that's why I do normally a keyword search to see, and is anybody looking for this topic?
Mhm.
And now I've added the piece about, yeah, you know, do you have any followers on Instagram? And I says, you can't come to me at 300 followers. I mean, like,
Yeah, absolutely.
yes, so yeah, so that is great though. That is great. And you touched on the fact that yeah, you don't need big equipment. I mean, the URI modem, I mean, microphone was only like $35. I upgraded to another one now, but you can start, and that sounds, I can't even tell the difference. It sounds the same, right?
Right.
So yeah, all you need is a microphone, right? And speakers or whatever you do. And I was interviewing a couple the other day that um, uh, they have a studio, but they don't have like a cameraman. He sets up cameras in his studio,
Mm.
and I guess you just press the click button and the thing records. So that's another cheaper way of doing it if you want, video. And it's a two-person podcast. So they're sitting
Mhm.
in chairs and it looks really good. It looks
Yeah,
like, it looks like your television studio. So yeah, it doesn't
absolutely.
cost a lot of money to do. And right, just go start talk
Mhm.
about something that people want to listen to. Um, I was listening to the radio this morning, and someone came on and talked about iHeartRadio, talked about very niche. I mean, something about infertility, how somebody messed up infertility, and now they have a podcast on this particular study that messed up infertility. And I'm
Yeah,
thinking, that is niche.
yeah,
You know what I
absolutely.
mean? So yeah, I mean, it's amazing what people come up with and make
Mhm.
it a podcast. And
Absolutely,
yeah. So all
absolutely.
right. So one of the questions I have here, I wasn't aware of it, is that you said that the Gen Z is driving the creator economy. And many dream of doing what you've done. What is the best advice you have for the Gen Zs? And I'm assuming those are the 20-something-year-old. Is
Yeah,
there a lot of them in podcasting or just YouTubing?
well, they're driving the economy, meaning they're the ones that are the buyers of content now. They're the ones that
Oh,
are
okay.
scrolling on social media. That's why Gary Vee and I call it interest media, right? Like
Mm,
you've got to be able to capture someone's interest really, really quick. It's not just about social anymore. Like you can't get social until there's interest. And so I think that's the bigger thing. So when you look at, folks that are 30 and under, 32 and under, the things that they're doing, the way that they consume, that's where advertisers are going. I mean, go look at TV commercials now, right? Like TV commercials when I were growing up, it was all geared towards people 65 and older, right? Well, now you don't see that anymore, right? Like you
mm,
see people trying to go viral, and that has become TV commercials now. Like there's all these new AI products and technology products that are driving the buzz, and health and fitness that's driving the buzz. And so
yeah.
those are the people that are really moving the economy, because that's where the advertisers and sponsors are trying to target too. They're the ones spending right now.
Well, that's it's the first time I heard that one. So my mind has
Yeah.
been blown by that.
Yeah. So think about it this way.
Yeah.
In 4 years, 2030, 75% of the workforce is going to be millennial and Gen Z.
Hmm. What are we doing with
So
the others?
if they're the workforce, they're the ones getting the paychecks, they're the ones spending the money, right? And so that's where they're the ones driving the economy right now.
Hmm. So I've got to circle back to that. So is your content geared to them? Because I've never really geared my content to the Gen Z. Very rare.
No, and I'm not saying that people need to gear their content there. I'm just saying you're going to have more Gen Z listeners. When you look at your stats, you'll have more than you think. My my audience is still in the 35 to 55 range. Like that's the
Right.
range that
Because
my
you're talking
audience
about
is.
business topics. Right.
Right. But I do have 25% that are, you know, 30 and under. So
Mm,
that does tell me that they're wanting to learn about business as well too. So
yeah.
don't
Yeah.
think that
Okay.
the younger generation are just wild and nonchalant. No, like they're starting businesses now. You can be a content creator making millions of dollars, and we see it at 20 years old,
Oh,
17
I
years
know they're
old.
doing that, which is why I throw the YouTube question in there, because that's
Right.
usually where they're doing it. Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right. Okay. Okay. Awesome. All right. So tell us about your book, How to Be a Good Leader When You've Never Had One. Why did you
Yeah.
write it, and what do you want readers to walk away with?
So I wrote it because I asked my kids, aside from your dad, tell me a good leader that you know. Give me three good leaders. And they instantly gave me social media influencers. And I said, wait, how do you know that they're good leaders? When I was growing up, we had leadership books and we talked
Hmm.
about leadership in school. And my kids were like, no, we don't talk about leadership at all. So I knew I needed to write a book selfishly for my kids. So I was just going to write something for them. And then I looked up and I already had like 150 pages. And I was like, oh, this actually might be something. So I developed it even further. But that's why I wrote the book, because I don't think that most of us have seen good leadership anymore, because we always talk about great. And great is someone else's opinion. Good is what you can do and be on a daily basis. And so I wanted to have a conversation about good leadership. And so, what will people walk away from with the book? They're going to walk away with the blueprint of good do's and don'ts. So, here's things that I need to be doing to be a good leader. Here's how I tap into emotional intelligence, which we don't talk about enough in leadership now. The things that we did, I'm going to say, in the past aren't the way that modern people associate anymore. Like it used to be like this, Myrna. My mom would tell me to go do something and I did it. Right.
Yeah.
My mom would
Right.
tell me that this is the reason why we have to do this and I didn't
I
question it.
need to.
Well,
Yeah.
now when you tell someone something, by the time you finish it, they've already researched to make sure what you're telling them is the truth. Right? We didn't have the internet. We didn't have Chat GPT when I was growing up. So if my grandma
Oh,
or
it's
if
so
my
funny.
manager told me something, I had to
Yeah.
believe him, you know?
It's so true. That's what my daughter is. I mean, I don't even know. They're so fast.
Right.
I'm talking to her, and the minute she's looking it up on Google.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And I
crazy.
don't even know she's doing it. I mean,
Yeah,
it's transparent.
yeah,
You are very right.
yeah.
Yes,
And so that's the purpose of the book. It's to give modern leaders the blueprint to lead modern employees, to lead modern communities, to lead modern households. So it's a lot of principle, it's a lot of action that you can put into place today.
beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, as you were talking, something popped into my head, but I'm not even going to touch on it. About what good leadership looks like, and it has to
There
be
you go.
politics. So I'll just leave it there. Awesome. All right. So tell our listening audience how they can get in touch with you. Tell us your website. I think I mentioned it at the beginning of the
Yep.
show, but you can mention it again at your website, your social
Yep.
media handles, and how they can pick up a copy of your book.
Yes. So mickhuntofficial.com is the website. Book is available anywhere you purchase books. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million. We have links on the website too. Social media, I would love a follow. I'd love for you to tell me that you heard me here on Myrna's show. Maybe I'll do something special and like sign a couple of books if you tell me that you did that. But on
Nice.
Instagram, I am at Mick Unplugged, and everywhere else, it's my name, Mick Hunt.
So on Instagram, it's Mick Unplugged, and everywhere else it's Mick Hunt, like LinkedIn and Twitter.
Yep.
Right. Mick Hunt.
Yep. And I'm much more active on Instagram and LinkedIn.
Right.
That's where I live.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, Mick, this has been a great conversation. I congratulate you on the work that you've been doing in this podcasting space. Thank
Thank you.
you for sharing some tips for, the podcasters out there that are trying to make it a business. I like the
Yes.
word that you use, side hustle. It's not bad as a side hustle because a side hustle, you're still making money, right?
You should
But
be. You should be.
yeah,
Yes.
it should be if you have a side hustle, right? Yeah, a side
Yes.
hustle, you're making money. But yeah, if you make it a business where you're doing it full time, then you should have a business model and
There
not
you go.
just doing what you're doing, right? Yep,
Exactly.
right.
Exactly.
So I mean, yeah, thank you for your tips on that. I will have an article on this content, which is just basically a summary of my conversation with Mick on my website, the show page, which is myhelps.us. I would also link out to his book, link out to his website, and link out to his social media handles. So if you miss it here, then you can go there and just click the link. So, Mick, this was great, great information. I learned right along with my listening audience today. So, thank you so much for being on the show. And I am glad that I chose you as a guest.
I am honored that you chose me, and it means the world to spend some time with you today. So thank you for having me for sure.
Yes, thank you. You're very welcome. All right. Any last words, Mick, before we wrap up?
No, everyone make sure that you are giving Myrna 5-star ratings and write out reviews everywhere. So if you're listening to this episode, go give Myrna a review right now.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Right. Thank you. All right, guys. Well, listen, you heard Mick, right? So share this to any future podcasters and also give a rating and review. And also go and check out Mick's podcast. I will put that on my listening rotation as well. The Mick Unplugged podcast, and leave him a review. And, he's interactive. So tell him what you want to hear. Yeah, if there's one thing that I took away from this conversation, it's that. So maybe I'll incorporate that in the future. Thanks again, Mick. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio podcast and television show. Until next time, namaste.